Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes, Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. An Arizona man was arrested before he could implement his plans to participate in a mass shooting to start a race war.
Investigators say that a Prescott man tried to start a race war ahead of November's election by carrying out a mass shooting targeting black people. New court records are showing how the months-long investigation played out. 12 News journalist Jonathan McCall spent the afternoon reading through these documents. And Jonathan, what did you learn?
Yeah, Mark Caribe. Mark Prieto said he wanted to carry that attack out at a rap concert in Georgia because that's where he would find a high concentration of black people. Tonight we've learned that he even tried to recruit an FBI informant and an undercover agent. Tonight, federal court records are revealing how the FBI broke up a plot to stop a mass shooting. Back in October, the FBI says it began its investigation into Mark Prieto after a confidential informant who spoke with him more than a dozen times over 3 years at various gun shows said Prieto called for a mass shooting targeting blacks, Jews, and Muslims before the 2024 presidential election. During a January gun show in Phoenix, Prieto tried recruiting that informant and an undercover FBI agent. According to court records, Prieto wanted to carry the plan out in Georgia because, he says, when he was a kid, that was one of the most conservative states in the country. More specifically, Prieto wanted to carry out the attack at a rap concert because he said there would be, quote, a high concentration of African Americans. During a February meetup at a gun show, Prieto began offering details of the plan, including the number of guns to be used. During this meetup, Prieto sold that undercover agent a gun for $2,000 and said he would also like to use grenades during the attack because it can, quote, cause panic. At another gun show in March in Prescott Valley, Prieto provided more specific details. That attack would take place in Atlanta at State Farm Arena on May 14th or 15th. Performing that night was rapper Bad Bunny. During that gun show, Prieto sold an AR-15 rifle to that undercover agent for $1,000 and told them to, quote, bring as many magazines as the gun could carry. In the following weeks, agents continued to monitor Prieto's movements. During an April meetup, Prieto continued to fine-tune his plans, even discussing heading east to do reconnaissance, but emphasized the attack, quote, must happen prior to the election and as soon as possible. Authorities arrested Prieto back on May 14th as he crossed into New Mexico. Investigators say he had several guns in his truck, even more found at his home in Prescott while executing a search warrant.
And Jonathan, do we know what Prieto told investigators after he was arrested?
Yeah, Caribe, he told investigators that he actually admitted to those conversations with that confidential informant as well as that undercover agent, saying that they did interact with those conversations, but he said that he was not planning to carry out that attack. And instead, when he was headed east on Interstate 40, he was headed to Florida to take care of his mom. Mark Caribe.
All right. Now, according to reports based on information from the FBI, 58-year-old Mark Adams Prieto from Arizona had plans to participate in a mass shooting and targeted foundational black Americans as the victims of that shooting in a plan to instigate a race war before the 2024 presidential election, and believed that martial law would be implemented shortly after the 2024 election and that a mass shooting should occur before the 2024 presidential election. And Mark Adams Prieto allegedly started making plans to participate in this mass shooting that would target black Americans way back in October of 2023 as he went to gun shows. And as he went to gun shows, he openly discussed this plan to participate in this mass shooting that would target black Americans at a Bad Bunny concert. Now, as Mark Adams Prieto discussed these plans at these gun shows, he talked to them about them to an informant, and this informant then went over to the FBI, and as they went to the FBI began doing its investigation into Mark Adams Prieto and sent undercover agents to go on their investigation. And as they went on their investigation, they spoke with Mark Adams Prieto more than 15 times over 3 years at various gun shows. And as they spoke with him at different gun shows over the year, he talked about advocating for this mass shooting, specifically targeting Black Americans and people of other religions, and made the plan mainly to target Black Americans because he believed that if he targeted Black Americans in Atlanta at the Bad Bunny concert, this incident would be so tragic that if it was done before the 2024 election, martial law would be implemented in his eyes after the mass shooting occurred. And I'm thinking that he believed that if Donald Trump was elected president of the United States, that this martial law would be put in place and that this race war would go on, and it would be whites versus blacks in this race war that he imagined in his mind. However, as he was talking about his plans eventually and selling guns to undercover agents, eventually the FBI got enough evidence on Mark Adams Prieto to make their case and were able to arrest Mark Adams Prieto and get him indicted by a federal grand jury on charges of firearms trafficking, transfer of a firearm in use of a hate crime, and possession of an unregistered firearm. And now that he's in the custody of the FBI, Mark Adams Prieto has been prevented from participating in the planned mass shooting that he planned to participate in with accomplices. Now, the FBI see Mark Adams Prieto's alleged actions as an isolated incident, but when I take a critical examination of Mark Adams Prieto's alleged actions as related to making the plans to participate in the mass murder of Black people, it definitely fits the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And it's clear to me that Mark Adams Prieto is one of these beta males who's basically living in what I call a rose-colored reality in The Man Crisis, a rose-colored reality in a place I call the secret world, a place where beta males go when they are feeling insecure and inadequate about themselves and need to go someplace to express their natural masculinity and natural sexuality. And it's clear to me that Mark Adams Prieto has this feelings of insecurity and inadequacy as related to Black people, and because he feels insecure and inadequate in the presence of Black people, this formed the foundation of his hatred of Black people. And as it formed the foundation of his hatred of Black people, he began to make plans in the secret world to take the lives of Black people, and believed that he could create this grand event that would create this race war between Black Americans and white Americans, because in his mind, where he believes the world revolves around him and only him, that his race war would basically start all based on an incident that he would instigate at this Bad Bunny concert in Atlanta before 2024. This is how warped and twisted this racist was as related to his own mind. He believed that the world revolved around him and only him, and in his narcissism, he believed that he could instigate a race war by just him participating in this mass shooting, and thought that because his actions would lead to this tragedy taking place, that Black people would become so incensed that they would go out here looking to take up arms and look to go out here and fight white Americans, and this would lead to martial law being put in place after the 2024 election, after he believed possibly Donald Trump would be elected. And it just shows how twisted this man's whole perception of reality is, that he, one, believed that the world revolved around him and only him, two, believed that his actions would lead to this race war starting, And 3, just shows how just depraved and how little indifference to life that he had, because he didn't understand that when it comes to these concerts, there are not just black people who are predominantly in Atlanta or going to a rap concert. Again, showing how racist this guy was, because in his eyes, only black people go to rap concerts. However, when it comes to rap music is enjoyed by people of all races, and he would have basically wound up taking the lives of whole lots of people, regardless of race, because bullets don't know what race is. But when it came to this guy, again, he deliberately, and I believe maliciously with intent, wanted to target black people, and he wanted to target black people because of his deep hatred of black people, and he believed that he could start this race war similar to the delusional plans that Charles Manson had back in the 1960s when he started participating in the serial killings of white women like Sharon Tate. The mindset that Mark Adams Prieto has is very similar to that of Charles Manson, who himself, again, with malice aforethought, began having people in his Manson family participate in the murders of people, believing in his narcissistic mind that he would be able to implement this race war and get black people riled up to the point where they want to fight against white people. Again, this is the delusion that many of these beta males have in the secret world. And again, a lot of these racists, basically, as they're living in their secret world, in their fantasies at these gun shows, they basically go out here and have these plans to participate in this kind of violence. Again, when I listen to Mark Adams Prieto, he not only sounds similar to Charles Manson, the serial killer, he also sounds very similar to the recent Tops mass shooter here in New York, Peyton Gendron, who also had plans to participate in a mass shooting after he wound up in a internet echo chamber where he was sitting there listening to all sorts of white supremacists talk about their hatred of black people. And as Peyton Gendron started at 18 years old, sitting in that online echo chamber that was exacerbated by these algorithms, where they basically fed that teenage boy whole lots of anti-black and racist information, as not really information, misinformation, because it's misinformation because a lot of the propaganda put on these racist websites and even on platforms like YouTube, a lot of this content that's up there basically is meant to reinforce a lot of lies that white supremacists tell about black people being inferior, black people not being human, black people not being competent, and also blaming black people for the problems of the world. That's what is on many of these racist websites that these guys go to look at on Google. And as the algorithm feeds these males information, misinformation, not information, but misinformation, what it does is it basically radicalizes many of these individuals. And many of these individuals, as they're in the secret world, they take this misinformation, and what they do is start making their plans to participate in a very heinous act of terrorism. And I'm going to call it terrorism and not a crime, because a terrorist's whole plan is to instill fear in people and get people so emotional that they react in a radical fashion, similar to what we saw with the hijackers who implemented the September 11th terror attacks. And when it comes to these terrorists, we need to start calling them what they are, because what Mark Adams Prieto, like Peyton Gendron, wanted to do was participate in an act of terrorism at this Bad Bunny concert. He didn't just want to participate in an act, in a mass shooting. He was looking to target black people as a group because of his hatred of black people. And in his hatred of black people, he wanted to participate in this act of terrorism where he was looking to terrorize black people, no different than a member of the Ku Klux Klan when they were making their plans to participate in a lynching with a group of racists. But instead of getting a group of racists this lone individual wanted to recruit individuals to help him participate in this act of terrorism. And what he wanted to do was go out here and murder black people, hoping that people would be so polarized in the black community that they would go out and look to take up arms and take up arms against white people so that they could have the justification in the race war to go out here and participate in the extermination of blacks, similar to what was done at Black Wall Street back in 1921. This is what this depraved individual wanted to instigate as related to black people, and again just shows you how depraved and how little indifference he had to black life or even the lives of other people, because when it comes to racists like this, they basically see other whites and non-blacks who wind up casualties in their whole incidents as collateral damage, and again just shows you how sick and depraved this individual is. Now, some would say that this man was mentally ill, and I'm going to say, no, this man was not mentally ill at all. No, when it comes to these beta males, these men, basically, again, because they feel inadequate about themselves and feel insecure about their masculinity and even their sexuality, what happens is these men are of sound mind, but they are simmering and seething with anger because they don't want to make the efforts to improve themselves. No, what they do is go to the secret world and overcompensate by taking up an interest in things like weapons that they have in the secret world as they're living their smooth life where they're all by themselves with no conflicts, problems, or obstacles in the real world. But in the secret world, they're basically, again, collecting these weapons being able to implement their plans to participate in this violence that they believe will define them as a man as related to the event they have basically dreamed of participating in. And that's really what these men really want to do. Again, they want to hurt other people because they feel insecure about themselves. And again, the hatred that these men have towards black people is rooted in their insecurities about themselves. And again, these men basically, again, they know what they're doing. They are of sound mind. And as they create these imaginary plans, they think that the world is going to work a certain way, but the reality is completely different. Because in reality, when it comes to human beings, when they hear about a racist like this, talking about how they want to murder black people, and I use the word murder because that's what this man was planning with malice aforethought, people who are of sound mind look at this kind of man and see him for the just pathetic and sick individual that he is, and want to be disgusted because his plans to murder black people just show how racist and sick this man is, and show somebody who is just, again, really twisted as related to his perception of the world. When people see a guy like this making these plans, they look at him as having something wrong because, again, bullets do not discriminate based on race. No, they don't discriminate because when you're firing a high-powered weapon, there's no way to really know what you're doing when these guns are being fired because people are scrambling all over the place. So that whole delusion that this guy has, that he's just going to kill black people, is absolutely ridiculous. When you have a concert, people are going to be running for their lives, and people of all races will get sadly shot if this guy was able to, again, implement his plans. And that's just the reality of things. And when it comes to black people are not going to take up arms like this individual believes. I mean, when it comes to black people, yes, there will be outrage, there will be anger, but black people didn't take up arms when Charles Manson started his plans back in the 1960s, where he murdered Sharon Tate. And black people did not take up arms when Peyton Gendron participated in his mass shooting, showing that this guy basically is living in his own world, as related to his narcissism, because black people, again, are not really out here looking to implement violence. No, black people are looking to stand up for our rights, and we're looking to get our rights through trying to get tangibles in exchange for our vote. We're not looking to do harm to anyone, because most black people, again, are not violent people. That's a idea that this guy basically got from his own twisted mind, and was reinforced by many ideas that are presented in many of these white supremacist media that's out here, whether it be these websites, whether it be these videos that are on social media, whether it be any of this media that is fed through these algorithms to people when they're doing searches, whether this misinformation, and I say misinformation again, because this is not actual information. No, when you go out and check actual sources, you will quickly find that many of these sites and these videos are filled with misinformation. All you have to do is some research, but these males don't want to do that type of objective research. No, they are in their feelings, and since they are in their feelings, they look for misinformation that will sate their feelings and stimulate their emotions and give them the justification to believe they have the right to do harm to people that haven't done anything to them. That's where these guys are as related to their mind and the hatred that they have for black people. Again, and that's why black people, we have to really take it seriously out here, because when it comes to these white racists like this and non-black racists, because there are non-black people who are just like this, who are online, whether it be these guys who are reading all of this misinformation about Israel and Palestine, and they're reading all of this misinformation. And again, because there's no filter as related to these individuals online, there are these echo chambers going on, and that's why this lawsuit against sites like YouTube and Reddit is extremely important, because what's going on is individuals like this are being fueled because of algorithms that basically create these searches with all of this tailored misinformation. And this tailored misinformation is basically creating an echo chamber where these individuals get all of this misinformation, gets their emotions stimulated, and then start looking to make plans to participate in mass murder of black people. And again, this is why black folks, we got to keep our heads on a swivel this summer, because we are in, again, like I said, the season of the simp. And when it comes to the season of the simp, you've got a lot of individuals who are children of the corn, and these children of the corn basically growing up like stalks with this misinformation, coming up with these plans, and again, with it being a very, what they think to be pivotal election. And it's not really pivotal, because the whole Trump-Biden election has a lot of these polarized individuals extremely irate, has them irate and believing that they are going to change the direction of the country with their events that historically haven't had much of an impact when you consider what was done as related to, again, Charles Manson and Peyton Gendron just recently. Their events did not really move the needle, but because these individuals are so caught up in the polarization from the misinformation they have received, what they are looking to do is, again, act on their hatred with malice aforethought by participating in these type of events. And again, black folks, we got to keep our heads on a swivel, because these beta males are out here looking to do harm to black people. And again, looking to do harm to black people based on misinformation, looking to implement these grand plans that they've had in their head for an extended period of time. And thank God this man was caught before he could go out here and participate in his plans for this mass shooting that he thought would kick off a race war. But now he's in a jail cell as related to federal jail, as related to basically him being jammed up. And as he's been in this federal jail as related to these plans, what is happening is he's now not able to kick off this incident to start a race war, but he's going to be dealing with another kind of war inside of that jail. And if he is convicted, he will be at war with Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles. And as they wage war on his front side and his backside, as they trade him for Little Debbie snack cakes, ramen noodles, packets of Crystal Light lemonade, packets of Crystal Light tea, Taster's Choice coffee, off-brand fruit punch, off-brand lemonade, off-brand lemon lime drink, off-brand orange drink, off-brand grape drink, off-brand apple juice, off-brand Oreo cookies, off-brand duplex cookies, off-brand lemon cookies, off-brand vanilla wafers, off-brand ginger snaps, off-brand sugar wafers, Hunt's Snack Pack puddings, Kit Kat candy bars, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pies, packets of soy sauce, packets of sriracha sauce, packets of tuna, packets of beef, Snyder's pretzels, prison chips, Fritos chips, Mounds candy bars. I mean, when they get through trading his front side and the backside and waging war with the carbon rods as they spit roast dude, he will then rue the day as he looks up and Mr. Sprinkles steps in and finishes him off with a spray of special sauce to the front side and the backside. Then, after spraying the backside with the special sauce, he will then call all the dudes from Cell Block D to see his handiwork as he shows his backside looking like the inside of a Entenmann's Louisiana crunch cake. And that's where Mark Adams Prieto will be dealing with the reality of life in prison as he has to deal with the nightmare that he is going to currently be in, a nightmare that he's currently in because of his own ideas about reality being so warped, and as he has to deal with the dark reality of life in prison with Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles, and Mr. Sprinkles, again, basically making his backside look like the inside of a Louisiana crunch cake. He basically will rue the day that he basically tried to start this race war because there's no way he can win the war inside the penitentiary against all those guys in the penitentiary. And that will be the final fate of Mark Adams Prieto, another one of these racist beta males who is basically a man in crisis because, again, he's basically one of these racists who's living in a world of misinformation about black people, living in a world of misinformation that was given to him by racist propaganda made up by racists, made up to make it look like, oh, he's going to be able to change the world as related to things with his race, with his mass shooting. But his mindset for mass shooting is the most dangerous thing because we're starting to see an increase in frequency of this violence. I mean, we had Peyton Gendron just do this in 2022, and here we are in 2024, and we have another individual looking to do this kind of harm to people, and that really shows us the man crisis getting progressively worse here in this country because we have millions of guys out here like Mark Adams Prieto. We saw them on January 6th after the whole Trump presidency situation got out of hand as related to Donald Trump losing the election. There are millions of these guys, and that's what makes this a very scary situation. And with the way we have raised Gen Z, and we have lots of racists, so this whole situation is a scary one because there are millions of these racists out here, millions of racists out here who have been raised in a dysfunctional fashion, and these men in crisis are all sitting there thinking about making a crisis that could turn into a national tragedy, and that's why we have to be looking to deal with this man crisis in this country, because this man crisis basically is one that could be one episode away from a great tragedy. And the whole thing is that we in this country are far behind as related to government in acknowledging this man crisis, a man crisis that really started with the family, a family that fell completely apart But in white supremacist America, they don't want to acknowledge the man crisis, because to acknowledge the man crisis means to talk to this white woman who basically is the first teacher of racism and white supremacy, the first teacher of racism and white supremacy to her sons that grew up as beta males in feminism, feeling inadequate about their masculinity because their father wasn't in their life, or that father was basically raised to be a racist. And these men, basically filled with a head filled with misinformation, are not just ticking time bombs, because the COVID-19 pandemic basically turned them into landmines. And these landmines are all across the country. And the scariest part is that most of us don't know what will happen when one of them explodes, or what damage they will do when they explode. And thank God, in this case, this landmine of Mark Adams Prieto, as related to his alleged actions, was stopped before he could explode and do devastating harm to black people and devastating harm to the country's safety and security overall. Now, if you want to learn what motivates a beta male to behave in this dysfunctional fashion and have them have these ideas to participate in this kind of violence and how to stop this kind of behavior, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos about the man crisis and the devastating impact it's having on America, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Illuminati, the man who rules the world, takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteem, Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this action-packed, all-new Esteem series adventure. Get your copy of Esteem, Horror in the Hamptons in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.